People because they're short isn't nice. Hello there, and welcome to my Bloons Tower Defense 5 channel. I'm Italian Ninja. This is where I make attempts at defeating challenges I've set out for myself, make progress, and learn to get better at this game, and subsequently, life. If you enjoy this type of stuff, feel free to subscribe. If you comment, I'll shout you out. We are working on Dance Floor on medium today. Gonna follow a similar strategy and go Ninja Monkey. And we're gonna go the strategy: Ninja Monkey, Dart Monkey. We might go and attack shooter, but I don't know. Probably just likely a Dart Monkey here, and then we're gonna go Monkey Apprentice, Monkey Engineer. But you guys will see, and if you're having difficulty with this map, just follow along, and you guys can beat it too. You guys can get the medal. But I'm gonna tell you guys a story today about Little Dave. I don't really have any shoutouts. I don't have any questions of the day. I should probably change that to question of the week, but I'm just making this. If you're here from the previous video, thank you for watching 2 in a row so you can hear my story about Little Dave. But pretty much my story about Little Dave is kind of Dave's a funny guy that I worked with. He's I'm gonna try to describe him for you. The reason we call him Little Dave is because he's like, I mean, he's probably 4 foot, maybe 4'10", 4'9". He might be a little bit taller than that, and he might be actually 5 foot. But it's like it relative to everybody else, he is so miniature. He's just this like, not kidding, like 4'9", 4'10" guy, and he's probably only 110 pounds. So he's Little Dave, and Dave's probably about 50 years old. And he is got a head full of friggin' steam. He's talking a mile a minute. Sounds like he could be on drugs, but it doesn't, appear to be by any stretch of the imagination based on how he is. He's just a high energy guy. And the funny part is like Dave likes to ride across country. We're in Canada here, so he likes to ride across country on his bicycle, not a motorcycle, just a bicycle. He likes to just take a tent. He hooks up one of those little kid carrying carts to his bicycle, and he will ride as far. I think last year he rode as far as he could east, and he was trying to get all the way to Nova Scotia or PEI. I think that was the plan, and then he made it something like 26 or 27 days, and then he turned around and came back, and I was like, "What the hell, Dave?" Like, the funny thing is like I asked him, I was like, "Dave, when you're on these things, where do you sleep?" And he said that he says, parks. He goes, "If you put a tent up for a night," he goes, "nobody usually gives you any shit. Nobody comes and says anything." And he said, even if they do, he goes, "if you tell them why you're there," he goes, "usually they'll just let you stay the night because people don't really care if they don't want things to become habits. If you were going to stay for one night in a park that you're not supposed to stay in, that's one thing. If you're going to be there for a year, that's another thing, right?" And Dave, they don't really care too much about because he's just kind of passing through, and he's a big talker, right? So he goes around the cities, and he chats with people, and he'll talk to street vendors, and he goes, "You'd be surprised at the generosity of people, and like they want to follow you, but there's no, like, he's not a media guy, he's not online, he doesn't have any kind of personality stuff, he's just doing this for himself." And it's so cool, can you imagine that? Like, just going around doing shit. Like, I can't, I'm not into that myself. I think it'd be really cool to go from coast to coast on a bike one day, just travel and challenge yourself and go. I don't have the time right now or the money. And I definitely don't have the willpower to do that at this current point in my life, but I appreciate someone like Dave who does. But the funny part was about Little Dave is that even though he was only 4'10", he was like, a nice guy. And he had a rough life by the sounds of it, He had a kid who was a drug dealer that he used to go home to. And I mean, actually, you know what? Now that I'm thinking about it, maybe Dave was on drugs because he always was talking a mile a minute and shit. But his son actually was a drug dealer and was on. He was out on bail currently, and he's out on bail, and he's having guys come to the house and still buy drugs from him and stuff. And they were breaking down the door, and I think Dave actually, so there was a whole week while Dave was off, and this is all just lead up to the story about what made me really like Dave, because these guys that I work with, a lot of these guys are really rough men. But the thing is at the end of the day, they're actually like, you know, they're good people, you know. So, where I'm going with Dave here is that Dave was telling me, so he, at one point, Dave had probably taken a week or two off, and I hadn't heard why. I didn't know, and I ran the assembly line at this point, so I was kind of like one of the top dogs. But the thing was, is the company didn't tell me and inform me that my guy was off and for what reason, right? I just kind of would show up every day, and whoever was there, it's like, okay, well, we're running shit with whoever we got, right? And so when Dave didn't show up, I was a little bit disappointed because Dave was really good at his infeed spot, you know? He had no issues doing it, and he fucking loved it. So, Dave doing his job over there, him not being there definitely caused a little bit of a problem for me, but it wasn't a big enough issue for where I have to try to hunt him down and investigate him. So anyway, a couple weeks later, Dave comes back and his face looks a little rough, eh? And then some of the people had told me, they'd say, hey, yeah, Dave's house got broken into. Dave's house got broken into. And it wasn't until Dave came back that I asked him one day outside of work after work at the end of the day what had happened. Basically what he said was that his son's a drug dealer and he was living with his son, and he woke up to somebody pounding on the door, and as he was walking up the stairs to open up the door, because the door is at the top of the stairs, he said they kicked the door off the hinges and it landed on him, and then they just ran on the door, ran on top of him and everything, and then he said he just laid underneath it, and they ran over him one way and ran over him the other way, and he got into a fucking said he was in pretty rough shape, and it fucked his face up real good. It was all swollen, black eye, and you know, he knocked a couple teeth out. And I said, Dave, you go to the hospital? And he's like, fuck no. And I'm like, you just stayed at home for a couple weeks until it healed? And he's like, yep. He goes and held down the fort and made sure that if anybody else was coming that we were fucking, like, this guy is like, you know, I don't know how to, I'm not sure what to think about it, you know, because Dave is definitely like a sketchy guy, you know, but he wasn't like a bad guy. Like, he wasn't mad at me. I wouldn't have wanted to be on the angry side of Dave, but he wasn't mad at me, so I was cool, you know. And it was like, we're having this conversation and he's telling me about all this stuff, and he's like, he goes, you know, they're probably going to come back because they didn't get what they wanted. They couldn't find any of the drugs, and they couldn't find anything of value to take from his son. And I guess his son owed them money probably, so that's kind of the troublesome thing there. But anyway, we'll just pause here and I'll tell you guys a little bit about the game. So I just grabbed a Dartling gun just because I wanted to test it, because I knew I wasn't going to have a difficult time on this level and I was going to have a little bit extra money. And I grabbed a monkey sniper and I put him up there, up on the top left beside my monkey village. Other than that, pretty standard monkey engineer. I didn't go tack shooter this time, but I did go my dart monkey right there on the corner, on the inside corner there. So yeah, this is medium. This isn't very difficult for me, but you know, I wanted to run through and get the medal on this one, and you know, give you guys an example to follow if you're looking at trying to beat this yourself and having difficulty. So yeah, continue the story with little Dave, and we're gonna get to the bottom here where actually I wanted to, so I told you about it. There's a website, it's actually called, I think it's called Crazy Guy on a Bike. And it's where guys like Dave and guys just like Dave, they go on this website and they kind of talk about, like, you know, where to start, when to start, and best timing of the year, and blah, 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 blah. And they get on to all the little nitty details of it. I was just seeing here my tower information and which ones I had to upgrade and stuff. I've never really used a Monkey Ace, so I am going to have to do that in the future, and I want to see how that turns out. Mortar Tower, Heli Pilot, oh yeah, those are all fully upgraded. Dartling gun isn't, so that was partially why I wanted to have that on there. I want to have them all upgraded completely, just so that if I ever need to use one or want to use one. I didn't even know, Milk was talking about a Spectre, and I didn't even know what a Spectre was until he said an Ace, and I was like, oh, it's the flying unit. So I got to try that too, because I want to see how that ends up working. But anyway, I'll finish the story here about Dave, because this whole video, actually the last two videos have pretty much been about Dave. I just woke up thinking about him, and I was like, so what I wanted to say about Dave is Dave made overhead garage door springs for like 10 years, you know. One day he just casually mentioned it. I don't know how true it is or not, but you know, for the most part, these guys are pretty honest guys, and when they're not, you can tell. You know, so my vibe from Dave is that he was telling me the truth. And when he said he made garage door head springs for 10 years, he laughed and then he looked at them and he goes, actually, he goes, I might have made those. And he was laughing at it as he was laughing as he was telling me. And I'm like, shit, he probably did. You know, if you think about it, if it's like, it depends how many guys were making springs. And I asked him, I said, well, how many guys were making springs when you were making them? And he goes, I was the only one. And I was like, what? He's like, yeah. He goes, everybody else did their own separate part of the process, right? And he goes, unless I was sick or something like that, he goes, I made all of them. So I'm like, for 10 fucking years, this guy made like all the garage door springs, over all the overhead garage door springs. And like, let's just assume that he made all the ones for Canada, because how many fucking garage door springs could you make that you needed? You know, how many are needed? That's like a good question, right? How many overhead doors are sold every year? It'd be a good indication of how much industrial commercial space is being put up. That'd be a good indication of that. But anyway, so he told me that, and if you guys, you know, are in Canada or close to the Canadian border, there's a chance that Dave made your overhead garage door spring, not the ones for your the garage door inside your you know, attached garage, or you know, separate building garage or whatever it is. Not those garage door springs. It'd be a overhead garage door spring, like an industrial unit, one with those like a chain that you have to, you know, chain up and chain down, if you know what I'm talking about. But big well, that was supposed to be on do not disturb mode, but 2 p.m. here. That's my alarm to start getting ready for work, but I'm going to finish this video before we end up going to do that. So, I'll finish the story here about Dave. So, little Dave made overhead garage door springs, crazyguyonaBike.com. And what I wanted to say about little Dave, you know, him and his drug dealing son, is that he was actually like a really nice guy. And this is an attestment to this, eh? So, one day I'm running the assembly lines, and I don't know what it was that day that was friggin' stressing me out and causing me a lot of pain, but whatever it was, it must have been obvious. And I was pretty honest with everybody when things weren't going right and when things were pissing me off. And mainly, it wasn't so much the employees below me that pissed me off. It was just my supervisor above me that really upset me. And the main reason was just he was just incompetent and couldn't help. You know, and that's kind of a real troublesome thing when you try to go upwards for support and they don't do anything. Like, there's nothing that they can do to help you. They just turn back at you and go, yeah, you got to figure it out. And it's like, yeah, dude, I'm trying my best. But I, like, you know, I have too much going on. Like, when you're running a crew of 14 guys, or I guess, so this is actually the problem. The problem was that it was supposed to be a crew of 14 men. They gave me 11 and a half. And the reason I'll say they gave me 11 and a half is I had a guy who was absolutely terrible, and he was pretty much a half a man because he couldn't even really do his job and you had to help him. So when you're short 2.5 guys, it's kind of a real burdensome problem. And then when you start to run into issues with anything mechanical and you have to fix stuff, it's like my crew wasn't trained very well. So I was trying my best to train them as I was fixing things and as I was running everything, you know. And then on top of me, I had my supervisor who was supposed to be, I thought he was supposed to support me and help me because any supervisor I've ever had, that's how they handle things. He never did because he didn't know how to do fucking anything. I'll tell you, this guy's a fucking loser, you know. Like, he's a guy that you would see face to face and think, oh man, I want to, you know, that guy seems like he'd be a cool guy to hang out with. And the thing is you probably wouldn't be wrong. He probably is a cool guy to hang out with, just completely useless and incompetent when it comes to anything that's important. So I'm just going to say, guys, you want to stay away from people like that. It took me a while to recognize it. And we ended up having a huge falling out. But this is just to set up the context for Dave, because I would be running by Dave, and I mean literally running, and I'm in a Canadian factory here. So for anybody who's following along and is from Canada and works in a factory or anything, that's not really allowed. You're not supposed to be running in a factory. And on top of that, I'm the pretty much the boss. I was like a lead hand, right? They called me a line lead, and they had actually pretty much given me the position, but didn't give me the pay. So, take that for what it is. But eventually, after a couple of months, I ended up fucking just freaking out and telling them to take the job and shove it up their fucking ass, because who cares, right? Who's like, what's the point of me doing all this if you're not even gonna pay me the extra money? So anyway, where I'm going with all this is I'm running the assembly line, and we're having a fucking real burdensome day. And by that, what I mean is like the thing that is furthest away from me keeps breaking, and I keep having to go over to fix it. And there was no solution to the problem. Like, sometimes you would have something that breaks and nobody knows how to fix it. And it's like, we hadn't dealt with it before, so nobody knew how to fix it. And my supervisor comes over and he's watching me watch the problem, and he's just like, oh, well, you know what to do? And I'm like, no, do you know what to do? And he's like, no, I have no idea. And he was completely useless. So he literally had no idea. And for hours, all I was trying to get him to do was like help in some kind of way. Can you just try to fuck with it or do something? And it's like, he was so, and this is the problem, with guys like this, is like, he's so scared to change anything, and he has no authorization to do anything. He wasn't even allowed to go into these things. Like, he wasn't even really allowed to go in and do any of these things above me. Like, he had no authorization over me on changing anything. So, and the reason was they just straight up don't trust him because he fucking sucked. So, and we're watching this shit go down, and I didn't even really notice that my crew was watching me as closely as they were. But Dave had noticed that I was freaking the fuck out that day. And he just asked me as I was walking by, and he asked me very casually, he goes, how's it going? And I go, dude, fucking freaking out. Like, this guy's fucking pissing me off. I was like, I want to take his head and put it through the goddamn wall. I was like, I hate this guy, And I'm like talking all this shit. And Dave, he knew I had to run off. So I run off. And as I come back, Dave goes, hey, Nick. And I go, what's up? And he just took a loony and he slammed it on the table, and he goes, sometimes you just need a little bit of good luck. And he just gave me the loony. And you know what's funny, guys? I don't think I'll ever spend that loony my whole life. I'll keep that thing. I still got it pinned to my board. Well, not pinned because it's metal, but it's on a magnetic clip that's clipped together, and it's on a magnet. But I just wanted to say that, like, guys like Dave, it's fucking amazing, because, it's very inspirational to have a guy like that, where it's like, he's told me quite a bit about his life, and it's like, he had a very rough go at it, but, he kept his enthusiasm, and he seemed to understand where the good people were, and, how to get along with them. So I just wanted to leave you guys with that story today. I wanted to tell you guys about Little Dave and my experience with guys like Little Dave. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoy that type of stuff. If you don't like my story, then subscribe. If you didn't like my story, unsubscribe. I already went down a subscriber, so yeah. Anyway, have a good one, guys. Bye now.